Hi everyone. Today we're going to look at the science laboratory and its safety rules and precautions. So a science laboratory is a room in which scientific investigations are carried out. Students are required to know and follow the rules and safety precautions to avoid accidents in the science laboratory. So the picture below shows you an example of a science laboratory. Moving along, we look at the general rules and safety precautions. Now, you should not enter a science lab without your teacher's permission. Definitely no food and drinks in the lab. You're not allowed to enter the lab assistant's room and the storeroom. Only use the apparatus and materials prepared with the teacher's permission. All the apparatus and materials must only be used as instructed by the teacher. Moving along, materials and apparatus should be handled correctly to avoid damages and of course accidents. Always check the label on the bottle before using it. Do not taste any chemicals unless instructed by your teacher. Then it is fine. Use a lighter or a match to light up the Bunsen burner, and do not point the mouth of the boiling tube to yourself or your friend. Report any accident or injury such as cuts and burns to the teacher immediately. Definitely do not run or play in the laboratory. When any chemicals comes into contact with your body or clothing, you should wash it with plenty of water. Keep the science lab clean, especially after an experiment. Clean and wash all the apparatus used and return them to their proper place. Switch off all electrical appliances and the Bunsen burners before leaving the science laboratory. Now, what are the common lab apparatus? Now, these are the things that you will see in the laboratory, and you must know how to use them and what they're used for. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the stopwatch, and it's used to measure time. A thermometer is used to measure temperature. A gas jar, definitely to collect gas as the name suggests. A test tube to contain small quantities of chemicals. A crucible is used to heat solids over a flame. Next, a beaker is used to contain chemicals or to collect liquids. A boiling tube to contain small quantities of chemicals for heating purposes. An evaporating dish to allow liquid to evaporate from a solution. A conical flask to contain chemicals or to collect liquids. And this one here is a test tube holder. It's used to hold a test tube during heating. Moving along. A filter funnel is used to filter and separate mixtures of solids and liquids. A retort stand and a clamp is used to hold the apparatus during an experiment. A burette is to measure the volume of solutions to an accuracy of 0.1 cm cube. A pipette is used to measure the volume of solutions accurately. A measuring cylinder is used to measure the volume of solutions to an accuracy of 1 cm cube. A Bunsen burner. Now if you notice, the Bunsen burner is spelled with a capital B because it is named after Robert Bunsen. So it's used to heat substances during an experiment. A wire gauze is used to distribute heat evenly when heating. A tripod stand is actually used with a wire gauze, and it's used to support the apparatus during heating. Round-bottomed flask is used to contain liquids and chemicals used in preparing gases, which requires heating. And finally, a flat-bottomed flask to contain chemicals and liquids used in preparing gases which do not require heating. Now, using a Bunsen burner. Now, before we move on to using a Bunsen burner, let's look at the different parts of a Bunsen burner. Now, this part of a Bunsen burner is called a barrel. This part over here is a collar. This hole here is the air hole, and finally at the bottom is the base. Now, how do we use a Bunsen burner? Make sure that the hose is connected tightly to the gas pipe and the Bunsen burner. Close the air hole by turning the collar. Light up the match and bring it close to the top of the barrel. Turn on the gas slowly. Open the air hole. So open this air hole until a blue flame is formed. To avoid accidents when using a Bunsen burner, please use a lighter or a match to light up a Bunsen burner. Do not point the mouth of the boiling tube to your friend or to yourself. Do not heat flammable chemicals directly. And finally, turn off the gas after using a Bunsen burner. Now, the next thing we're going to look at are hazard symbols. Now, hazard symbols can be found as labels on different chemicals, on the bottles of the different chemicals. Now, this symbol over here means that it is highly flammable. Now, examples of chemicals that have this symbol include phosphorus, petrol, alcohol, and kerosene. Now, this symbol over here means that chemicals are explosive. So, some examples of these chemicals include sodium, potassium, hydrogen, and lithium. Now, this symbol over here means that the chemical is toxic. So, some examples of these chemicals include mercury, lead, cyanide, hydrogen sulfide, and formaldehyde. Now, this symbol means that the chemical is a radioactive chemical, and the examples include uranium and radium. Now, the next symbol is this one over here. It means that the chemical is corrosive. These include concentrated acid and alkali. And finally, this symbol means that the chemical is harmful or it is an irritant. Now, these include ammonia, iodine, and chloroform. Now, the next thing we're going to look at are the steps in a scientific investigation. Now, scientific investigations are carried out to acquire data that can explain scientific observations. Now, before we look at the steps taken in a scientific investigation, we will look at something called variables. Now, I'd like to give you some examples of variables and to be able to identify the different types of variables. Now, the first type that we're going to look at is called the manipulated variable. Now, manipulator variable is a variable that you have control over, and it's a variable that you have decided. So let's look at an example. Now, if let's say we want to conduct an experiment to look at the effect of water on the growth of plants. Now, there are two variables in this sentence, water and the growth of plants. Now, I'll give you a few seconds to think about which of these two is considered a manipulated variable. Is it water or is it the growth of plants? Yes, it's water. Now, water is a manipulated variable because it is something that you have decided in the experiment. It is something that you have control over. So, for example, in this experiment, you can put your plants in less water, no water, or a lot of water. Now, we then look at this variable over here, the growth of plants. Now, the growth of plants is considered a responding variable. Now, it is something that you have no control over. It is the result of an experiment. And it is something that you have not decided. So the growth of plants is a responding variable. Now, moving along, we look at the third type of variable, which is the fixed variable. Now, fixed variable, as the name suggests, are factors that are kept constant throughout an experiment. So in the case of the effect of water on the growth of plants, what are the variables that you can keep or you must keep constant throughout an experiment? So these include sunlight and the size of the plant.